So tonight's session, we're going to talk about the University of Queensland's Master of Pharmaceutical Industry Practice. And as I've just said, my name is Sarah Roberts-Thompson and I'm the Head of School of Pharmacy. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners, the Yugara and Turrbal people, and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet, or on which we're streaming from here and from wherever you are around Australia. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country, and we recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. And of course, our First Nations people have had a lot of contributions in the area of medicinal products. So we have a panel here today, which I'm going to introduce in a moment. Just very quickly, I'll tell you who we've got. We're joined tonight by Associate Professor Peter Cabot, who is the program lead for the program. We're joined by Ben Lewis, who is the Manager, Process Engineering and Manufacturing Sciences at Patheon Biologics. We're joined by Kate Pascal, who is the Director and Head of Site Management at IQVIA. We're joined by two of our students as well, Michaela Glazinska, who's a current student in her final year, and Monica Tanami, who is also a current student in her final year. But before I ask our panel some questions, I thought I'd give a very quick overview of the program itself so you have a little bit of base information. So our program is a very innovative program. It's 2 years full time. And the way in which we've structured it is that in your year one or the first year of the program, we cover the product registration, the process from discovery and formulation through to post-registration surveillance. So the life cycle of drug development and through to industry and clinical practice. In year two, we focus on your ability to choose where you want to go with your career. You can either do virtually a year of placement in industry, or you can do a mix of placement and research, or even some coursework with an employability focus. We're the only course in Australia, and indeed probably wider than Australia, that has over a year of industry placement. And that's a very important part of our program. You can start your studies in February or July. So we have 2 entry points. No matter where you enter, you do that first year of coursework. And we'll talk a little bit with our panel in a moment about what that first year is all about. We also have smaller bite-sized pieces, if you like, a graduate certificate pathway. So you can come in and just do 6 months study. And we also package with English if that's a requirement for you to enter into the program. We have a lot of extra things that make the program very special, a lot of upskilling and engagement. We have some programs in English for academic communication. We have a partnership with our library where we teach a lot about Microsoft Office and other computer software packages. We have a library upskilling sessions where we work with the librarians and teach you how to search for literature and various other skills that are required in the digital world. And we have a big focus on employability upskilling. And employability is all about making you ready for whatever career you move on to. So when it comes to our placements and our employability, we actually have a dedicated team. It is headed by Linda McConnell, and Linda and her team are there to support you, to find the placements for you, to help you improve your employability skills and to ensure that you get that all-important work experience. So this is just a little bit about that extra employability upskilling. In year one, what's available to you are one-on-one consults with Linda and her team who are skilled in graduate recruitment. We have a private LinkedIn group for employability and networking information. You can access industry engagement events and workshops. Then in year two, Linda and her team will help you with placement management. So ensuring that you find the right placement, ensuring that the placement goes well for you. And she will also help you with graduate job applications. And again, we'll hear from our students in a moment. So why would you come to the University of Queensland to do this program? Well, we are very proud that at University of Queensland, we are the highest ranking Australian university in the Nature Index. And that is one of the premier places to publish your research work. And we have a proud tradition of major international contributions to health and pharmaceutical care and the pharmaceutical industry. Now, I just put this slide up. It's quite an impressive slide when you see all the companies that are listed on there. These are just some of our industry partners that we have sent our students on placement. And you can see that there are quite a number of different areas of industry, whether it might be government, big pharma, small pharma, biotechnology, that we actually have relationships with. Here at the University of Queensland, and more specifically at the Pharmacy Australia Centre of Excellence, which is where we carry out this program, it is a purpose-built facility which was built for pharmacy students and pharmaceutical scientist students, so those that come into this master's. It's located in a biomedical science precinct. We're next door to the Princess Alexandra Hospital and also the Translational Research Institute, which also has some startup companies as part of that, where some of our students are placed. And we're a short walk from the UQ St Lucia campus and close to the city centre, with very good access to public transport. Literally, the railway station is just down the end of this building. And so that is actually a picture of our beautiful building that's located here at university. We have, because it's so new, we have some very innovative teaching spaces. In your first year in the coursework, this is one of the laboratories where you will actually learn different components of compounding and drug development. Just some more shots of our facilities. And this is our library, which is actually on site. So it's open both during semester and in between semesters as well, although with shorter hours. Now, I don't want to take up any more time giving you a basic overview. I want you to actually hear from the people that know what this is all about. So I'm going to remind you of the people that we have here. We have Associate Professor Peter Cabot, who's the program lead. Pete, do you want to give a wave there? Yep, excellent, thank you. Ben Lewis, who is an industry representative. Hi, Ben. Kate from IQVIA. Hi, Kate. Michaela, who's one of our final year students. Hi, Michaela, and Monica. And what I might do is unshare or stop sharing, whatever is the correct terminology there. And I'm going to start by asking each of our panel members if they'd actually introduce themselves, a little bit about their role in the industry or wherever it might be, and for our students, perhaps what countries you've come from, and for our students, perhaps, and even our industry panel members, what's your educational background? So, Pete, I actually might start with you as the
Sure.
Program Director. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I'm a pharmacy academic. I teach mostly in the areas, and for the last 25 years in the areas of pharmaceutical science and drug discovery. Prior to that, I'm actually trained as an analytical chemist. So drug analysis is kind of at my heart. And then did a PhD in pharmacology. So I really blended it, mixed it up in pharmacy at that point. So my areas of interest are in preclinical drug discovery. So I design new medicines, essentially pain medicines, and then I teach about that in my teaching. So I'm the inaugural and was part of the development team for the master. And so have a history. It's only a short history. It's only been going for now 3 years, but it's been a great adventure.
Thanks, Pete. Ben, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I'm kind of smirking a little bit here because Peter and I actually share a lot of overlap. But I originate in Adelaide in South Australia, dealt mainly through a number of institutions, mainly Flinders University back home, Adelaide University, and the Ludwig Institute for Cancer Research in Melbourne. My background's a bit peppered, not so straightforward probably as Peter's. I did a double degree in chemistry and biochemistry principally because I didn't really know what to do, and had advice, which turned out to be very good advice, to choose both pathways. So very fortunate in that respect. My PhD was in clinical pharmacology, just like Peter's, where we have that significant overlap. But really, I guess I had an academic career for about 16 years. Initially started out in industry, in the genomics industry. I left that industry because I wanted, well, nobody could really answer the questions that I had, and found the answers to many of those questions at academia. And I've now returned to industry in recombinant protein manufacturing, essentially monoclonal antibodies and recombinant proteins. So in general, I've probably been doing this work for probably 23, 24 years. And I've had a number of industry experience, but in both phase 1, 2, and 3 for bacterial work, but also currently in recombinant mammalian work as well through my current employment at Patheon.
Great, thanks, Ben. That's quite a varied career, backwards and forwards, academia and industry. Kate, can I throw to you and find out a little bit about how you ended up where you are? What's your sort of background?
Yeah, sure. So my background, I'm actually a pharmacologist in my undergraduate degree, and then right into the then I went on with a PhD in neuropharmacology. This was back in the UK, as you might be able to tell from my accent. So my career in the pharmaceutical industry has actually allowed me to travel around the world and come to Australia and came here in 2003. So after my PhD, I decided academia was not for me, and I started in a career in clinical research. So my first job in industry was as a clinical research associate, so working on clinical trials, monitoring, traveling around to hospitals and GP clinics where the companies I was working for was running clinical trials and checking up on their progress. And since then, my career has been exclusively in clinical research, and I now work for IQVIA, who's probably the biggest CRO, clinical research organisation servicing pharmaceutical and biotech companies all around the world, huge global company. And I've been there now for about 5 years, and I oversee the Australian monitoring team who look after all of our full service clinical trial customers. So yeah.
Thanks, Kate. So pharmacology is quite a constant there. Kate, we've got some funny noise coming through on your microphone. I'm not sure, Lachlan, if you're able to assist us there, but I'll leave you with that. So I'm going to turn to our students now. Perhaps if I start with Michaela. So can you tell us, you've got an undergraduate degree and then you've come into this master's. Can you tell us what that is and where you're actually from?
Yeah, so I'm from Boulder, Colorado in the United States, and I completed my undergrad at Cornell University with nutritional science and biochemistry. And I initially wanted to go into medical school and then took a gap year and worked in a hospital and realized that that was not for me. So I moved on into QA, QC and doing some lab bench work in chemistry as well as in hospital. And I really wanted to get into clinical trials and industry. But I didn't want to have a master's that was purely in pharmacy or chemistry or biochem or something like that. I wanted something that had an internship component. And since I wasn't sure where I wanted to go in industry, I wanted something that was a little more broad. And that's how I kind of stumbled upon the program. And there was no other program that I could find like it. So I applied, and that's why I chose that route.
Wow, Boulder, Colorado through to subtropical Brisbane. That's got to be a little bit of a shock on the body.
Yeah, a lot of humid, not used to that.
Yeah.
Realized I do miss seasons. Didn't think I would, but I do.
Yeah, we do have 2 seasons here.
Yeah, hot and then humid hot.
That's right. Oh, thanks, Michaela. So, Monica, where are you from and what's your educational program through to here?
Hi, I'm Monica. I was born and raised on the Gold Coast, Australia, and my educational background is a Bachelor of Biomedicine at the University of Melbourne. I've also done an honours. I did have the initial dream of, becoming a professor by going through the PhD pathway. but unfortunately I did not enjoy my honours year as much as I thought I would. So I took a gap year similar to Michaela, and I worked my part-time job at a supermarket trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life. And I decided I did not want to work in a supermarket for the rest of my life because I could not stand for 9 hours every day. So I was looking for a profession still in health because I was very passionate about, helping others in some kind of way. But I also wanted a career where it wasn't capped. There was no, ceiling of career progression. So I was sort of looking around everywhere, and that's sort of how I stumbled upon this program. And I was really impressed by the fact that they have 1 full year of internships, because I think that's very important to get your foot in the door in this very competitive market. Yeah, that's how I found the program.
Excellent. You know what? I'm actually a pharmacist, and I must admit, one of the reasons I left community pharmacy was I couldn't stand on my feet 9 hours of the day either. So there's a few roles like that. So what I'm hearing from you both is how important that sort of experience is, because the experiences you had working in a supermarket or in a hospital actually gave you an idea of what careers you didn't want and what careers you might want. So can you, and maybe I'll go to Monica again, can you tell us, because you started, how important the placement experiences have been for you, and where have you done your placements?
So I did my first placement at Nucleus Network, which is a phase 1 clinical trial specialist site. And then I did my second placement at Novatech, which is a clinical research, contract research organization. And I've actually landed a job there. So I started in October through the program, and with help from Pete and Linda as well, I can see on the call. Yeah.
Excellent. And Michaela?
So I did my first industry placement with Novatech, and I did the CRA training and really fell in love with the job role and the whole department of clinical operations. And so based on that experience, I decided to extend my placement there. So I continued my second placement through there, and then also had a part-time contract working with them. And then I just finished my placement with them 2 weeks ago and accepted a job offer as a CRA with LabCorp starting in December.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations. Pete, what differentiates this program for others that you've seen on the market? I mean, you were part of the original development. What did you create to make it stand apart from other programs?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And I guess it's probably ringing out in some of the statements from the gang that are here, part of the team. So what we did that was a little bit different is we actually built this program with industry partners. So we went through an extensive consultation process with them about what do they think makes up the best experience. We had a pretty good mindset that the focus should be around placements. And so that's where we came up with a model, which we knew was going to be a big challenge. But we thought the first year we'd focus around the drug life cycle and how the different roles across industry, which there are many, so we had to pick some main key roles and focus where they fitted in with the drug life cycle and how it worked in that process of taking a drug right from discovery through to post-market surveillance and on to phase 4 trials and all of that out there at that end. So, and looking at the different roles and where they impact along that process, then in the placements in year 2 or the research courses in year 2, which are optional around, or even the coursework in year 2, extending that. But the focus was probably around those placements. And industry said to us they should be around 12 to 21 or 22 weeks each, which is what they are. And so that long, extensive placement in industry where you can actually embed some of those skills that you brought from your degree, as well as what you've got out of the first year, and build on that and engage as, so it's a work integrated learning model, engage closely as an intern in those roles. So the differentiating factor was probably largely the placements, but also then the preparation we undertake to get you into those placement sites.
So Kate, you've had students on placement, that's correct?
Yes, we had our first one this year. She did the longer, almost 6 months, so it was sort of back-to-back with us. And she's just taken on a permanent full-time position with us. So it's been very successful for her and for us. So it's good news.
Oh, that's fantastic. Can you tell us what your experience was like with having a student on placement or doing this internship? Both words used interchangeably, so I'll use them both.
Well, I have to say Linda made the whole process very smooth in terms of sort of, going through the selection process. So that was very easy. And then we took the approach of offering the intern a sort of entry-level clinical trial assistant role within the business, which is a role which supports all the regulatory documents and the trial master files for all of the studies that we work on. So that's their main function. So they work very closely in our project teams and with our clinical research associates. And we wanted to make sure that the intern had a proper experience of what actually having the proper CTA role was like, rather than coming in and just doing little bits of admin ad hoc here and there. We actually wanted to make sure they got a full experience with a mind, if everything worked out, that they would go on and secure a position, and it all worked out beautifully. So yeah, very positive experience for us.
Oh, thanks very much, Kate. Ben, you've had students on placement. What's your experience been like, and how have you structured the placement experience for them?
Yeah, it's been fantastic actually, and really just echoing Kate's comments as well, is that they bring a whole different dimension to our workspace as well. And I think it's important for students to realise that it's not one-way traffic in what we're dealing. Of course, we're imparting our knowledge and providing an environment for them to do that. But actually, what's been quite surprising and interesting for myself is the feedback from students actually, moving into the work that we do. So, again, sort of from Peter's perspective, he's seen them come through as students, and we're passing them on. It's a delight to actually understand that, or to experience that the knowledge that they're accruing at an undergraduate level actually translates very well into the workforce. So as Kate said, my students have been seamless in the way they've integrated into the workplace. It's unfortunate that the current student that I have is on an international visa and has to move on, but he's done extremely well in embedding himself into the system there and has brought some good knowledge with him. Otherwise, we'd be trying to secure him for a longer term position.
It's lovely hearing about that two-way. That's what we always hope, that and our students will bring some of their up-to-date knowledge that they've learned, and they can sort of be seamless. Michaela, how did you choose those placements that you've just told us about? What was it? Were there many? I know you've come through in very early stages of the program. Were there many choices that you had to make regarding what placement to take?
I feel really lucky that Linda came on when I was starting my placements, because she had garnered a rather large list to choose from. So it was kind of difficult because there were so many options and you could only really pick 3 to apply to. So I was really interested in clinical trials when I started the program, so I still had that invested interest. And then I did actually find a lot of interest in manufacturing and commercialization, which I didn't think I would like, as well as regulatory affairs. So I chose the CRA role based placement simply because it sounded similar to what I knew that I wanted to do when I came into the program. So I kind of wanted to get it out of the way to see if it was something I actually liked, and then planned on either doing one in manufacturing or regulatory affairs, or even a research project. And then I just happened to really enjoy my placement and wanted to continue, which is why I stayed. But I did have plans to do other ones. It just so happened that I fit really well with what I was doing that I was selected to do.
Oh, fantastic. Monica, the first year of coursework that you do in the program, how did that set you up to make your choice of what area you wanted to go into in a placement?
Yeah, during the first year of the program, we covered a very wide variety of topics in quite in-depth detail. And one of the topics that was covered by one of the subjects was the area of clinical trials. And I was quite interested in that because they had this really long document of rules, and I quite enjoyed sort of memorizing it. I've forgotten it now, but I quite enjoyed learning about it and memorizing it for like the exams. And so I really wanted to learn more about clinical trials. So when I saw Nucleus Network was one of our options, I sort of just went for that. And then for the second semester, Linda did a really good job at curating a very large list of possible placement sites. And I was really lost at what to pick. And I had some good chats with some of the hosts, the supervisors. So I was really lost, but then in the end, you know, I decided to go stay in the clinical trial space. And then, yeah, I picked Novatech because of that.
Pete, we keep giving Linda a wrap here. Would you like to explain who Linda is? I know I sort of introduced her in my slides, and I think Linda is actually online at the moment too. But can you explain who Linda is and the sort of support she does give to the students?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's right. It's the Linda story, isn't it? So Linda's role is the Work Integrated Learning Placement Manager, which I know that's a very long title. So essentially, Linda and I work as a team around the course and around the placements and the employability skills. And so Linda has experience in connecting with industry and reaches out to gain the placement sites, which, as you've heard, has been very successful. It's over 50 sites now on our books, and working closely with us as partners. So Linda works with that relationship, but also works with the students with another skill set that Linda has around this employability aspect, because providing a placement site is one thing, but having you appreciate what you need to do in order to engage as a professional. So building essentially a professional identity. And so Linda's focus is around that. And that might be things like, you know, using LinkedIn, things that sound very simple, but aren't. Writing a cover letter, which also sounds very simple, but it's amazing how many times they're stuffed up. Getting your CV into a shape, and actually then behaviours. And so the focus for the placement experience built around that is also about how you behave on that site, not necessarily about what you do, but your interactions, your use of communication. So together we develop all those aspects across that placement experience, because we know at the heart of it, once you bring a skill set in there, it's how you work in a team, how you communicate with people, and how your personal, professional perspective are kept separate, and you build that professional persona that works well in that work environment. So Linda's core to that aspect, and I work in around that with the academic aspects around that.
And Pete, you're not the only person teaching in the course, in the program. Can you just give us a quick overview of you know, the number of academics or some of the academics that might be working with you?
So yeah, that's true. It's not just about me and Linda. So we come in more in the placement end of the program. Across the first year, one of the key focuses of this program was actually to integrate the partnerships and relationships from industry. And so not only are the academics drawn from the academic arena here at the School of Pharmacy, but there are also partners from industry coming in to give their experiences, their insights, working in our tutorials, not only to give their perspective on what it's like to be in that part of industry, but what type of knowledge and what type of understanding you need to have to work in that space. So the academic team is actually that partnership team built both from industry and from the academic unit. And we thought, and we felt right from the outset, and the advisory team that still sits with us feel that that's an essential part to the success of this program, bringing those experiences and actually providing that mentorship along the way. So, so that's probably cool. So it's quite a number of people spread across that first year in particular.
Thanks very much. Ben, can you tell us a little bit about what you think is a good student experience in placement, not just in your company, but what are the sort of things a student should try to take away from a placement experience in industry?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Sarah. I think what students really need to take away with them is you know, it's a real world scenario that not everything works all the time. You know, that there's a number of things that need to occur for, you know, all the stars need to align sometimes for things to work. I think it's really important that they have a real world experience. I think sometimes when we think about careers and even, you know, I've had a lot of interaction with medicine, both teaching, you know, in hospitals, is that, you know, I guess the thing that things do go wrong. But what's important is that students understand what strategies and risk mitigation they can put in place to protect against those things going wrong. So there's a whole heap of learning around that. But I think the most important aspect there is that they get a true representation and a real world example of, like in my case now, how manufacturing works. And the other thing I think is important for students as well is that, you know, and I know they may come into situations where they think like that they're inexperienced or that they don't have the confidence to put a suggestion forward. But I think it's really important that students understand that actually, you know, we're all people, we're all normal, we all have our own different experiences. So I may not see something that, you know, a first year placement student may see. So I think it's important that they build their confidence in working in teams and understand how to contribute.
Thanks. And, you know, I've neglected to tell our audience that if they'd like to ask any specific questions, there is a Q&A box there and we're happy to ask any questions. We'll keep talking and asking our own questions. But if you have anything specific, please put a question in the Q&A box. Kate, what are the prospects like for jobs in the industry? And I know you're like one of the world's biggest CROs, I think, but you probably have a little bit of a knowledge about the industry itself across other areas as well. What is it like?
Well, it's a really good industry to be in. As like I said, you can transport yourself around the globe with those clinical research skills, so you can go and work because we're all operating to the same international standards. It's very easy to transport, and in fact, one of the strategies that we've had to take as a business, because of the lack of clinical research associates in Australia, the demand for them, because of how attractive Australia is to place to do clinical research, we actually hire in internationally now. So we bring CRAs in from all over the world to meet the demand because there isn't enough CRAs in the local market. So I think job prospects, if you know clinical research is something that you're interested in, there's definitely a big demand, not just as CRAs, but as CTAs, if you want to get involved in startup, regulatory, feasibility, all of that kind of stuff. It's yeah, a big growth area.
Excellent. And I mean, I think I haven't got the numbers at the tip of my tongue, but let's face it, the pharmaceuticals that are consumed by us as people are growing, you know, all the time. It's certainly a growth industry. That's definitely for sure. And also, Ben, the Australian government and also the Queensland government have got quite a focus on building up our manufacturing sector. Does that include our pharmaceutical manufacturing sector? And what does that mean for jobs in your part of the industry?
Yeah, you know, I guess it's something that we've always managed to outsource in previous years. There's some amazing incentives for international companies to manufacture pharmaceuticals and biopharmaceuticals within Australia. So the government's actually now switched on and very well aligned with what we need in terms of you know, supporting industry coming into manufacturing in Australia. So that's great. But what it's also doing, and we will see expansion and further Commonwealth money, you know, feeding into manufacturing here. But what that's also doing is providing a great basis for graduates to enter the workplace as well. So, you know, we've found it very difficult to find students over these last 2 years due to COVID. So we would often source, you know, from international from the international arena. But again, with restrictions on travel, that hasn't always been possible over the last couple of years. And we've actually got one person we're trying to get over from Malaysia who's kind of stuck and been stuck there for almost a year now. So what that's doing is it's allowing us to focus more on the Australian market, and looking to the universities and feeder structures coming through so that we can fill those positions.
Monica, if I could come back to you, can you perhaps tell us, what surprised you most about the program when you joined it, or looking back and reflecting, what was the most surprising thing?
I think the most surprising thing would have been how much was covered in the program, but in enough detail so that I could sort of gauge to see if I wanted to pursue it as my career or not. I was also really surprised at the amount of support that was given from, even though UQ is a very large university, I felt very well supported. Your professors know your name, you're not just a number and things like that. So I think that's probably the most surprising thing that I found.
Michaela, what about you? Anything surprise you when you look back?
Mine's kind of similar to Monica, where I was really surprised at the breadth of topics that they covered, and it was in enough detail where I knew if I had an interest in it or not. And then it also, I was really impressed with how much help I received with gaining employability skills through a lot of the workshops with Linda and the one-on-one there. And so it kind of helped me tailor my CV and my interview skills so that I was successful in those areas. And then I think the other thing that really surprised me was how much I actually learned from in class that did transfer into my placement. So even though clinical trials was only one part that we actually covered over the course, it was still a lot where I still felt that I came in with more knowledge or as much knowledge as other people that were hired in the same role that I was coming in and interning as.
Great. Pete, we had a question there. I know you've answered it, but if I can just, so other people can hear it. How many students are actually in the cohort?
Thanks, Sarah. Apologies, I dropped out for a minute. My computer restarted. It was good timing. So we started with 26 in our first semester when we started, and we're currently running from about 35 to 40 per class. So it's averaging around that at the moment, which is a nice size.
Excellent. Okay. Pete, I wanted to, both Monica and Michaela have chosen the placement route. Can you tell us a little bit about, we've had a few successes in the research side of the program as well. Can you give us a bit of an overview of that?
Yeah, so the placements, as everybody can probably appreciate, have been very popular. However, the students have also been thinking about their potential careers in research or getting experience of both because they're not really sure what direction they're going to take. And so some students have taken placement and research. And one of those students that actually did both of those has then decided to go on to do a PhD and has recently gained a scholarship and now is in his first year of his PhD at UQ. I guess the way the program was structured, it gives you the opportunities to build experiences from a couple of different types of experiences and then think about where do I want to go and applying for scholarships. So is one of those and doing the PhD. A number of other students, I'd say around about a quarter to a fifth of the cohort are looking at doing the research courses instead of the placement, with the view of potentially going to a PhD.
And we've got a really good question at the moment from Mary, who's, would you elaborate on how we can be more competent through this program than someone who's completed a pharmacy degree? So a pharmacist versus somebody that's come through this program. And we actually have some pharmacists that are actually in the program as well. So Pete, do you want to make a comment on that?
Yeah, it's so the degree diversity first I'll talk about from that perspective. We have potentially around about a quarter of the cohort of pharmacy trained from all over the world. So it's not from Australia, it's from all parts of the world, as well as biotechnology, bioengineers. We've got medical doctors and nurses. So a whole range of people with different skill sets coming in with biomedical science and a whole range of different things. The pharmacy degree, what that trains you for is practice as a clinical or hospital pharmacist, as well as a community pharmacist. So that degree does cover aspects of the drug life cycle, but it doesn't cover it to the depth this program does. So you'll be looking also in a pharmacy degree where we'll be learning about the management of therapeutics and counselling and a whole range of patient-focused applications of the use of therapeutics. So that's really at the later end of the scale of what this industry is, or the patient-focused application. There's very few pharmacy degrees that delve into the depth in terms of regulatory model, medical affairs, clinical trials, and GCP are not covered in any pharmacy program to the depth that we do.
Thanks. Ben and Kate, have you got any comments on the diversity of degrees of people coming into the industry? And I don't know if either of you have a comment on the difference between someone coming through a program like this versus a pharmacist. I mean, I think there are pros and cons, and a pharmacist can do a lot of these jobs with that degree as well. But any comments from either of you on that?
I think from my perspective, I don't think it's necessary to have that pharmacy background in order to be successful within, certainly for manufacturing sciences. Yeah, I think one of the key things that students probably should be aware of is that if you enjoy something, then you're always going to spend the time on investigating it, and it doesn't matter if you really have, if you don't think that you have the background to fulfill that role. But generally, if you're truly interested, then you'll tend to spend more time on it, and it'll be more effective for you. But I think in terms of my exposure in the industry, it's so broad. You can have quality assurance or quality control, which there might be more analytical based people or more technique based people. There's microbiologists or manufacturing support teams. There's engineering. It's such a broad depth of science that I think that there's probably multiple areas that almost anybody can fall into, and we often see that. We often see transfers across from different departments, and it's not because they're not happy in a department. Say they might be in manufacturing, but they might move out into quality. They're just getting that further exposure and building on their own careers within that. So I don't think that you necessarily have to be fixed, and that this comes from a pharmacy perspective. I think a lot of people with a basic science degree would fit very well into what I've seen within manufacturing.
Kate, anything to add to that?
Well, I think for clinical research particularly, you do have to have a life sciences background, and we do have a variety: pharmacists, doctors, nurses, but also people with biomedical science, pharmacologists, whatever. But I agree with Ben. So for the wider industry, so for our commercial side of the business, we have people with all different kind of backgrounds who just have an interest in health, be that the accounting part of it, or the marketing part of it, or the branding part of it. So yeah, a wide variety, but specifically for clinical trials, monitors, CRAs, life sciences is what we need, but not just pharmacy.
Excellent.
Just to follow up on something that Kate said, then we have very large, the business. There's the business aspect of it as well. It's not just about manufacturing and the science, but there is very strong, business and project management, areas within our industry where, if you have that interest in clinical science and biotherapeutics and the manufacturing of those biotherapeutics, it almost touches almost every industry out there. It's really quite broad.
Michaela, have you, I'm just wondering, the friends that you've made since you've been here, what sort of backgrounds they have, and if they also found jobs now that they're also starting to graduate?
Yeah, from my recollection, most of our cohort was actually pharmacists by trade, where Monica and I and one other student weren't actually from a pharmacy background. But I know that of all of the students in our cohort that I'm friends with, everyone was able to find employment for full-time here in Australia that I'm aware of, which I believe is about half of our cohort that I'm aware of. And
Excellent.
in the cohort one as well.
Monica, anything to add to that?
No. As far as I know, a lot of our cohort has managed to find employment in a timely manner. Yeah, that was, I think, another surprising thing about the course, how employable you actually are at the end of it.
And we should mention, because there might be some people who are joining us from overseas, that over the last 12, 18 months, we've been teaching both face-to-face and online, and we're likely to continue doing that, so people can come in from overseas. And we set up a number of different industry placements across the globe. We actually have one with IQVIA in China, and one of our students, actually one of my research students who was in my lab, has now obtained a job in her home country in China. We also have placements in the USA and Singapore. Anywhere else, Pete? And most of them have actually got jobs as well overseas now.
Yeah, it's that's right, Sarah. It's been quite successful in that perspective. There's sites in Bangladesh and Sweden and China. There's a number there too. So, and that's something that we'll look at expanding further as the possibility of travel comes back into the realm.
Yes. So, Pete, any other outcomes from the program other than what Michaela and Monica have spoken about in terms of employment?
Yeah, I think as Michaela and Monica have seen with their colleagues, it has been very successful in the first group coming through, both in attaining employment back home. Some students have gone back home and are working now, like you said, in IQVIA and a whole range of large pharma as well as small pharma in their home countries. Also others here at Patheon, IQVIA here, as Kate has mentioned, and as well as going on to do PhDs. So it's actually been really successful. And this is given that the first cohort that came out of this program was actually mid-year this year. So it's still very fresh from a graduating cohort from the masters, but it's been quite impressive. So some very successful stories. And the best part with this cohort, because we do the LinkedIn aspect and around that professional development, it means that we can keep track of them and see how they're going. One of the students has actually now left one of their roles, has gone on to a higher role in medical affairs down in Sydney, from what I understand. So that's something I've seen the last couple of weeks.
Monica and Michaela, in that first year before you managed to have your placement experiences, did you feel that you were being introduced to the industry? Were you meeting some industry people, either in mentoring or professional development, or actually through your curriculum?
Yeah, 100%. A lot of the lectures were actually delivered by industry partners. So they would either come in person or dial in. We also had a Nobel laureate come in as well and speak to us about drug development. So that was really exciting. And a lot of the things that they teach is very applicable to the real world. And I don't think I fully appreciated that until I started the placements. And I almost can't believe that the actual coursework was only 1 year, because I learned so much that I still, refer back to this day. So yeah.
Excellent. Michaela?
So with us, since we were the second cohort, we only had 3 weeks in class before everything went online. But I think despite that, we had a lot of really good guest speakers that came on, and I learned based off of my previous experiences back at home how important networking is. So every time we had a guest speaker come in, I added them on LinkedIn and stuff like that. So I was really trying really hard to build my network really quickly. And then once things were back to face-to-face part-time and online. I definitely took advantage of going face-to-face and stuff like that. But I felt that despite the COVID circumstance, I did get to meet a lot of really interesting, awesome people in the industry. And I don't feel that I was left out of that despite the circumstances.
So we've got another good question there, and I might get you to answer it first, Michaela. Can you just tell us what a typical day might be in your internship? What were the sort of tasks that you might have done?
So with my internship, I was really lucky that I was the first intern that Novatech had here in Brisbane. So I essentially started and got integrated on the onboarding process like a normal employee. So to me, my structure was based off of their CRA1 program, and I had a really good relationship with my supervisor. And so we met once a week. We would talk about what my goals were, what types of activities I was doing, and then we would tailor the types of tasks that I was doing based off of the feedback that I received from other project teams and what my interests were. So I learned a lot, and I got to do a lot of progressive tasks that had some complexity to it that wasn't just purely admin, which I really enjoyed. And I think a lot of that was because I had a really awesome supervisor that exposed me to a lot of different project teams and areas, and really advocated for me to get really good experiences. So I had an amazing experience in that the day-to-day was different, but I didn't feel that I was an intern in my experience. I felt like I was a full working employee there. And it was really difficult to actually whittle down on my resume in a concise way all of the things that I was doing and what I was able to do.
Fabulous. Monica, another part of that question is, do you have to meet lots of new people? And how do your, I guess, your placement supervisors evaluate your progression?
Meeting lots of new people, yes. You'd have to interact with the people who are at your placement. But I also reached out to people who were still in the industry on LinkedIn, partly because I wanted to expand my network, but also because I wanted to find out what sort of roles other people had, what that involved, and whether I was interested enough to pursue it later in my career. What was I saying?
Meeting lots of people. So well, the next, how about, so I don't know if you do know the answer, or Pete might need to jump in. How do your placement supervisors or your mentors in your workplace evaluate your progression during your placement?
I usually had weekly or fortnightly meetings with my supervisor, and I sort of used that opportunity to sort of ask them questions that I had throughout the week in regards to maybe like ICH-GCP, which is something that's very relatable in the clinical trial space. And they sort of, I think, gauged my understanding and sort of my commitment in that manner.
And I guess further from that, from the academic perspective, the supervisors are involved in the assessments. They undertake the mid and final performance reviews. There's also, initially there's an agreement around the activities that are being undertaken, which is a living document, and you can update that and add activities as they build and build and build. And as new challenges come, so there's the academic aspects are built around directing towards those interactions, like the challenges of meeting people, the challenges of working in teams, some very new things, I think.
So Ben, are there any sort of pearls of wisdom that you'd like students to know about when they come on a placement experience with you or with any company?
Yeah, I think it's important to know, so, both Michaela and Monica have identified that, that they've had routine communication and have touched base with their supervisors, on weekly or fortnightly basis. But in terms of my experience with my students, it's daily interaction. We're working very closely together. There's, I don't want students to think that they're onboarded and then set off to do their own tasks in isolation. It's a very close working environment, specifically for manufacturing in a GMP facility. Obviously, the onboarding and training is important, so there's a large bulk of that groundwork that needs to be done. But everything is essentially team-based, and students aren't left in isolation. They're involved in the communications, they're involved in problem solving and solutions. and they're involved in the unit operations to actually manufacture, you know, real pharmaceuticals.
And Kate, anything you want to add to that?
I think Michaela explained the sort of making the most of your opportunity to network. You don't have to be reaching out to people necessarily even to talk about a project or even work. Just getting your face known and being that person that everybody goes, oh, there's intern whoever X, and we know who they are. So it's definitely worthwhile making the most of those opportunities. So never underestimate that, and ask for feedback if you're doing something or you're doing a task. Always ask for feedback. It's always the people who ask, you know, and show real interest in their own learning and progression that are the ones you have to watch, because they fly.
Yeah, good words. So just to people who are listening to us, if you have any further questions, please put them up now. I'm going to ask Michaela and Monica for any final wisdom that they have or they'd like to impart to students that are perhaps thinking of coming to a program like this. So Michaela.
I absolutely loved my experience. I'm a very outgoing personality, so I've been really involved in the program since the beginning with helping uplift courses and stuff like that. And I have really great relationships with everybody that's involved in the program, and I've greatly enjoyed it. I think I've definitely gotten my money's worth in that I learned a lot of new things. I've met a lot of amazing people, and I've had quite a lot of great experiences on top of that. And my one goal was to obtain employability at the end of it, which I did. And I'm very happy with the entire journey that it has been.
Great. And Monica?
Yes, I think my advice would be, if you're students and you're thinking about joining this course, I would 100% recommend it. But also, you know, do your own research as well. You know, reach out to people who are in the industry, who have the roles that you want, who went to similar schools with you, you know, as you, and just sort of find out like what sort of pathway they took. But I will say this master's course has really benefited me because it's allowed me to sort of obtain a role which I don't think I would have been able to get without the help from this master's course, just because it's at a level that I didn't expect to get. And also they teach you a lot of real life skills, and they teach you how to prepare budgets. They teach you how to, you know, manage projects using Gantt charts. They teach you how to, negotiate things and things like that. So it's a very useful course. I would highly recommend it.
And Pete, a final word from you?
Oh goodness, the final word.
Well, I'll let Lachlan have the final word.
So look, it's been a really fantastic development. It probably surprised me more than I expected how well that industry and academia could come together to build something that works. And what I really enjoy more than anything in this program is seeing the evolution of what the students are doing in terms of that placement engagement. It's seeing that growth out there, getting those challenges that they've never had before and actually dealing with it, which I think Ben talked about, those fails. You know, what is it? Fail quick. And having to sort through those problems in a real life environment, I think that has been something that's been really rewarding from my perspective.
Fabulous. And Michaela actually did make mention of the experience she's had with curriculum development. And we do involve our students in reviewing our courses and indeed building our courses in the first place. So I'm going to say thank you very much to all of our panelists for giving up some of your time tonight. Thank you very much, Monica, Michaela, Ben, Kate, and Pete. And I'm now going to hand to Lachlan just to say a few final words. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. From me, thank you to all of our speakers as well, and thank you to Sarah for emceeing us through tonight. It is genuinely a really rare but wonderful thing to see when students, staff, and industry partners can come together to tell such a rich story about how the program can benefit everybody and what they've gotten from it. And it's not every day that you can actually quite vividly see the way that the program has been built effectively with industry in mind. But I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of housekeeping things. So I'm from UQ Future Students. If you did come along this evening and this is the first time that you've seen or heard about this program, or you have any further questions that have come along, you know, whether it's during the session tonight, you haven't had an opportunity to ask or prefer not to, or it's tomorrow or any time in the future, you're more than welcome to visit the Future Students site. It's UQ Future Students on Google or future-students.uq.edu.au. All our programs are up there. The Future Student staff like myself are contactable on the site as well, and more than happy to help you out with anything. I would like to point out that applications are actually open for the program, both the Master and the Grad Cert, and they are open until January 31st of next year for a February commencement. So I really encourage getting those applications in early if you are thinking about it. The more time you give yourself to work through that process, the better. And just finally, you know, on the topic of the employability and tailoring to the needs of the industry, we have some upcoming professional developments which are actually free for members of the community over the next few weeks. And they're in partnership with our UQ Ventures organization. So you can see those ones at the Future Students website as well on our events page, focusing on ideas, pitching, and project management skills that are really crucial in a wide variety of industries. So from me, I'll wrap everything up and thank all of our speakers one more time. It really has been a pleasure. And I wish everybody a really great night. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye.